Okay, are we posted ready, everybody? And I think, and if I recall correctly, Mr. Humphreys is going to read it.
I think there's in a minute.
Okay. Good evening. And no, you don't have to say good evening. We're not at the Barter Theater. On behalf of the Abingdon Town Council, I'd like to welcome everyone here to the October 1st, 2012 meeting of the Washington County, of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia regular council meeting. It's been I've had a rather ambitious day so far, and you'll have to bear with me. A couple of things that I will point out. One of which is that there will be an opportunity at the end of the meeting, if there is someone who wishes to bring some matters before the council's attention, there will be an opportunity again towards the end of the meeting to address us about issues that might concern you. Let's see, Madam Clerk, I don't see copies of the meeting materials over there.
There was one when I left the council this afternoon about 4 o'clock. I imagine that Ms. McCowan is holding it up.
I bet some interested party has it, and I'm sure very good. We do, the council receives a package of materials electronically these days that helps us to prepare for the meetings, and if anyone wishes to see copies of those documents, Ms. McCowan won't hog it. She will be happy to share it with you, and very good. Okay, that being said, I will ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Here.
Mr. Humphreys?
Here.
Mr. Berry?
Here.
Mrs. Lowe?
Here.
And Mayor Morgan?
Here.
And let the record reflect that all 5 council members are present.
Very good. It's customary for us to begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I believe Councilman Humphreys is going to handle that tonight.
If you all will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Council, we have 3 sets of minutes for your consideration. We have the September 4th, 2012 work session meeting, and then, as well as the minutes from the September 4th regular meeting and also the September 19th work session meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to be noted to any of these sets of minutes? Hearing no corrections or additions, I will ask if there is a motion regarding the minutes.
I would move that we approve the 3 sets of minutes by acclamation, your Mayor.
I would be willing to do that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hearing any nays? No nays recorded. Okay, thank you. First of all, tonight before we get into that, I would call on Mr. Kelly to offer a little something regarding our trip to the Virginia Municipal League.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council and members of the public. Over the course of the last few days, we had occasion to go to Williamsburg for the Virginia Municipal League Conference. And one of the highlights of us being able to go to that conference was that the town of Abingdon was selected for the highest award that the Virginia Municipal League gives out. It's referred to as the President's Award. And I'm going to show you what it looks like, and then I'm going to give you a brief description about it. But this is basically what the award looks like. It's given to only one locality from the president of the league. And this year, we were the successful locality across the state in receiving that. This award was granted to the town based upon our current and ongoing Wi-Fi project that we have here in Abingdon in an effort to provide free internet access to virtually anyone who comes to town. In addition, we are actually reactivating one of our old existing sirens that we used to use with fire calls. That's and some of you may have heard it go off by accident one night. Not long ago, but it's located up below William King Arts Center, and in addition we are acquiring 3 modern sirens that would be placed strategically throughout the town. The purpose of those sirens is to notify the public in the event that we have catastrophic events that could occur. You all will recall that we did have the tornado about a year ago. And that was, in fact, devastating to a couple of our neighborhoods and a couple of our neighbors up the road. So what this system is designed to do is to notify people where they need to tune into or what they need to do in the event of those emergencies. We will be advertising that project as it advances forward. The equipment is currently on order. I will point out to all of you here tonight that you already have the ability to sign up to receive electronic alerts through either computer or telephone calling. And those little application forms will be going out in tax tickets if they haven't already. And if you would fill those out, get them back to us, and you'll be put on the list so that if something happens catastrophic, or if we just have a fantastic event that we want you to know about, we'll send you out a nice alert on the computer system or by telephone if you prefer. But there'll be a lot more of that made public here in a very short period of time. So please keep your ears and eyes open and look for perhaps some press on this in the very upcoming future. What I'd like to do, Mr. Mayor, is I'd like to take this and set it on the table over there so that they can peruse it. And then we also have the full story that was printed about the project that has been framed, and I'll set it over there as well, and you can peruse that and read a little bit about it, and we'll find a nice permanent hanging spot for this in the very near future. But it was a wonderful conference. Abingdon's won an award 2 years in a row, last year for the preservation efforts at the muster grounds, and then this year the presidential award for our Wi-Fi system. So.
And this was, I believe, this was the first time that we received the top award within the state of Virginia for this, and we were certainly gratified that that happened.
That's correct. Mr. Mayor, I might also point out that our IT director, Floyd Bailey, who is not here, I see John in the back who works in the IT department, but these guys are instrumental in making this happen. Floyd has been out with some minor surgery, so he's not here tonight. And also Garrett Jackson and any of the other town staff who participated in going out and finding proper locations for Wi-Fi boxes and towers and things like that could not have been possible without a very competent town staff. So my hat's off to them.
Here, here. Yes, sir. Yeah, Councilman Humphreys was mentioning that in addition to the emergency sirens we have, we're also, as part of the overall project, setting up emergency call boxes on parts of the Virginia Creeper Trail where there's not really adequate cell phone coverage, and we feel that that will add some protection to the public as well. And the other thing that I think is worth noting is that this part of the project is a culmination of the process. It really goes back 20 years ago with the start of the electronic village of Abingdon, where our town was an early leader in this process, and ultimately we've come to a better understanding of what was feasible for us to do and what was realistic for us as well, and what services were not going to be met by the private sector. And so we were pleased to be able to offer this Wi-Fi service, which is an excellent benefit to all of us who live here, and is pretty useful for promoting the tourism aspect, or the traveling public aspect of our community as well, which we've learned is a more appropriate name in one sense of the word. Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. We have with us tonight Ms. Crystal Peak, who is the 4-H extension agent here in Abingdon, but she's not here to talk necessarily about the 4-H program. She has also Judy Compton with her, and I'm sorry, ma'am, but I've forgotten your name. Debbie Rasnick from Virginia Highlands Community College. I did remember that. And they are here to talk about information technology jobs, particularly trying to encourage women to get into that field and pointing out that there are opportunities. And I'll let you folks take things from here. Feel free to come forward.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity, and I won't take too much of your time, but we think it's an important message. I work for Virginia Tech. I'm a former educator, retired, and live near the Breaks Interstate Park. Anybody knows where it is, in Dickinson County and on the border of Kentucky. And I have a vested interest here in Abingdon. My son, Brett Compton, is an optometrist, and I have a grandson and maybe a little granddaughter come January, will be coming through the school system, so I really appreciate being here. And if you would, I work for the National Science Foundation. That's who pays our bills, so they want you to sign that you were here. And if you don't mind, if you give me your email address, I would really appreciate that. And I'm going to pass out a folder, but don't open it until we have one question I'm going to ask you to let you respond to. If I can get my PowerPoint going here, I'll just go quickly through that. And the question is, in the audience, if you would get an answer in your mind also. In the United States, of all the informational technology jobs and workforce, what percent of that is made up of women, all across the United States? So is it 65%, 45% are women, 35 or 25?
25.
35.
I'll go 35.
35. In the audience, what do you think? Anybody have an idea of made up of women? What percent of technology jobs are performed by women?
35.
35. Anybody else? 45. Good. Good answers. Any others?
Can I interrupt you just a second? I need you at the microphone if at all possible. We are broadcasting this,
All right.
and we won't be able to
Okay.
hear you. So
All right, let me see if I can, I need to look at my PowerPoints. Can I use?
That one over
all
there
right.
is easy.
Okay,
You can do
great.
that, just as long as we can get you
Yes.
recorded.
Right here.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
And I wanted to explain how
Crystal, the extension agents, got with me. We work with Washington County and Russell County in Virginia. That's the only two counties this National Science Foundation chose. In the Appalachian region, we thought there was a need, and we have extension agents, teachers, and counselors that help us pass this message. So Crystal, they write grants, a little mini grant, they get some funding to do this, and I think they're donating 2 trees with their funding for, can you explain that, Crystal, or the mayor of the trees?
We'll let Crystal explain
All right.
that, because the first I heard of it was about 5 minutes ago.
Actually, they're in honor of your award that you received at the BML. And since that goes along with technology and our program, then that's why we're donating the trees.
Thank you very much.
So the extension
We do
agents, they
appreciate it.
receive funding from us, and they're donating that to buy trees for the award that you won.
Thank you.
And so this is how, Crystal, we thought, who better at a town meeting? We worked with the school systems, and we've saturated the schools, the teachers, counselors, and parents. So we thought, community, we want to get down at the community and saturate the community with our message. So I heard several different percentages, and right now, only 25% of the jobs in the United States, technology jobs, are held by women. When this grant was written in 2007, 2 lady professors that have been working on gender issues, it was only 13%. So it's gone up from 2007 to 25% right now. But we want that to be higher. So we're trying to get more young women into technology. So I'm going to quickly go through, that shows you the answer. There's a problem, and we think there's a talent crisis. There needs to be more women, and not that men cannot do the jobs, that's fine, but for some reason, from the time middle school girls tend to like technology, and they want to do technology jobs, but the time they get to high school, for some reason, they're turned off to that notion, whether it's a male-dominated field, it's boring, I'll be sitting in a cubicle, it's sort of a basement-type cubicle concept, and girls tend, and women, young women, tend to want to be nurses or teachers in this area, but we'd like to change that. Because can you think of anything you do during the day that's not related to technology? Is there anything that you do? When you go to the grocery store, when you get gas, when you go to the doctor, everything you do has a technology job associated with it. And we would like for young women in our area, and those are good paying jobs, And I'm hoping Debbie Rasnick from the community college can share with us, with certificate programs at their college, some good paying jobs that you can get. So I'm going to stop right now, just let Debbie talk just for a minute and share with you some things that Virginia Highlands has.
Okay, I won't take too much of your time. I've got a handout. And I'll leave some of these over here on the table, and they're in your packet. But it's some of the degrees that we offer at Virginia Highlands and certificates that we offer in IT. And it's a varied field. We do web design, some people with the more creative side like the web design. We also do networking courses, network administrators, and working on that Wi-Fi system. You know, we've got training in that area. Recently, we're getting into, or right now, we're trying to get into the healthcare IT field, because that is a big field with the stimulus money going towards some incentives for the hospitals to prove that they're using meaningful use, they call it, of technology. So we're doing some training and some partnering with the hospital in that regard. But I will leave over here on the table some of the courses that we have. And I have on here my contact information as well as a QR code. Thought I'd put the technology in there that you can scan with your phone if you're into that sort of thing, and it'll take you to my website to just tell you about some of the offerings in IT that we have at Virginia Highlands. I have right now in my classes primarily male students, and that's great. Then they do a great job. But there's a whole untapped market. There's a need for more jobs than I can produce. So we're hoping that by getting not only women but more men into the field, that we can meet that demand. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just recently spoke with, when I started this grant, with Northrop Grumman and CGI, which are two large companies in Russell County, about the need, and they said they could not find enough trained people in technology. They intend to hire English people, communications people, good writers, but we want our people, to get trained, our young ladies to get trained, and gentlemen to get trained in technology, so that we can fill those jobs. They will not have to go out of the area to find those jobs. So we think there is things that prevent girls from going into technology jobs, and we're going to discuss those and see how you can help us. Why is that important? There's opportunities here. There's technology jobs available that go unfilled because of lack of trained people. And it's basically we think in the Appalachian area that we have colleges and jobs available, and we want to fill those jobs here. This is basically, we have a national team, a state team, and I'm the trainer consultant, and we work with extension agents and teachers and counselors trying to pass our word. I want to point your, pay attention to this right here. We call it the Stoker. Has anyone ridden a Stoker bike? Hold up your hand. Have you ever ridden a bike with, it's a tandem bike with two people? It's hard. We want you to vision young women on the front or young students on the front, and on the back are parents, teachers, counselors, community members. Can you steer from the back? No, you can't steer. All you can do is pedal. So, and what we want you to do is vision yourself on the back helping us provide information to young women, and it could be daughters, it could be nieces, it could be people at your church, any community group you see. If you would please try to pass the word on that there needs to be more young women trained in IT, because we want to fill those jobs. And in the packet I've given the board, and Crystal has this information at the extension office. If anybody here in the room wants these, the grant has a bookmark that tells all this information. We think the power of partners, somebody helping that young girl on the front, giving them information about what's available, what kind of salaries they can make, and then we have a brochure, and we call that person on the back of the bike the stoker. We want you to be a stoker with us. Help us stoke young women toward technology and training. And if it's just saying, have you ever considered it, talk with your guidance counselor, talk with someone at the community college, and find out what's available. And this is our model. It's called the Train the Trainer. I work with Crystal, I work with guidance counselors and teachers, and we develop stokers or people like you, and we hope you go out and talk to at least 10 other girls individually, if you could, for us, to stoke them along. And this is our website. It's www.aites5.org. And you can get on there. We scroll local women that have technology jobs on the bottom left. We scroll those all day long. There's a website you can go to find information about technology. And there is jobs in your community. There's jobs requiring IT skills in this community, and they go unfilled every day. Or they fill them with someone from out of the area, or they train them themselves. But if you can tack on an IT certificate from the community college to whatever else you like, you make yourself very hireable in the work field. Companies, I've listed a few: General Dynamics, CGI, Northrop Grumman, Eastman Chemical, the school systems, the colleges, all the medical fields, they all have jobs. Another partner we had was KVAT. They partnered with, I think here only, there was about 25 technology jobs in their business. So I didn't list them all. There wasn't a room, but if you can think of others, I'll be glad to add some to those slides. We'll change our slides periodically. It's everywhere. Can you think of anywhere that you do not have technology? It's just explore what they are, what jobs are available, and there's something out there for every person, and it makes them a very hireable prospect. What's in the future? 50% of the IT profession is going to retire in the future, and you can get a job related to technology. And we want you to be a stoker, help us stoke young women toward IT, and if you have any questions, we have this information at the Extension office. I work with Patrick Henry High School, Damascus Middle School, and we pass the word to all the schools, the teachers, and the counselors. Now we're reaching out to the community and hopefully the parents. And what else can you do? We would like for you to do whatever you can to pass the word to any girl you know that there is jobs available in technology, there's training available locally that can get them a pretty good job. And this is a survey. All right. If board members especially do not mind, I've given in your packet I have a paper copy of a survey that National Science Foundation wants us to gather data, and they tell us that we're doing a good job if we get these in. If you don't care, Debbie said she would help collect those afterwards. You don't have to do it now, but there's a paper copy, and there's a paper that you sign. Virginia Tech requires us to sign a paper that we can do that from you, and if you don't mind, I will send you in about 2 months a little 10-question survey saying, did we present this to you, and have you stoked anyone lately, and who was it? If you talked with a daughter at church, or it just is, in what capacity. So if you don't mind sharing your email with me, we will not send you anything else. It's a Survey Monkey. It's very reliable, and it will be coming from Crystal or myself, and we'll copy maybe to Debbie and let her look at it, but it's that's how we collect our data. And for those that do the online survey, we offer a drawing for a $50 gas card. That's how we try to get our information for the National Science Foundation. And we would like for you to complete the little paper survey and give us permission to send you an email survey later on and see if you've stoked anyone lately. And we challenge you to do that. We challenge you to become a stoker. And anybody in the audience has any questions, I'll be out in the hallway just in a few minutes. We will answer questions. And any questions right now? Does anybody have any questions of me or for Crystal?
Anybody?
Thank you. Jason, you was at our meeting the other day. We presented to the Chamber Board of Directors the other day.
Yes, ma'am. Do I fill out two? I've already filled out one.
No, you're good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate you being with us this evening.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, thank you. Our next item is a public hearing. This is the first reading of a proposed rezoning. Colonial Road Development, CMM Ventures, LLC, and United Way of Russell, Washington Counties. Michael C. Neal is the trustee and representative. This is an application to rezone properties located between Colonial Road and Hagee Street on the north side of such streets and known as lots number 23 and 24, consisting of .403 acres Lot 25 consisting of .225 acres, and Lot 26 consisting of .25 acres of the Colonial Road development. And this is a proposal to rezone from R3 Residential District to B3 Central Business District. Tax map number is 18, 1, 23, 24, 25, and 26. And Mr. Garrett Jackson, if you would come forward and talk with us about this, please.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, as you mentioned, the three properties are located on the corner of Preston and Colonial Road, Preston Street and Colonial Road. One, the United Way property, which is the largest, is actually split in zoning. The southern portion is M1 limited industrial. The northern portion is R3 residential, as are the other two lots. The Planning Commission heard this at a public hearing last Monday night. The Planning Commission's recommendation to the Town Council was that it not be rezoned B3, which would be Central Business District, because of the types of permitted uses by right, which that would allow into a fairly residential area, but instead be rezoned to O&I, office and institutional. The properties currently are being housed, are housing the United Way corporate offices for Washington, Russell, and I guess now Smith counties. And that's their intent, is to keep them as professional offices. With that, staff and Planning Commission felt that O&I was a better fit for that, so that residents wouldn't be dealing with some of the different types of businesses like gas stations and all that a B3 zoning would actually allow. So the Planning Commission recommended unanimously to rezone the property to O&I.
I will ask one question here before I open the public hearing, and that is clearly the property that is there right now is being used for business purpose. Are the functions that they're utilizing the property for right now legal within the existing zoning?
They are, because the building, the United Way building, or the United Way property is on, is actually split, and the side that the building is on is M1 limited industrial, which allows for offices.
And is there anything in particular that would be accomplished or benefit to making this rezoning?
Just allowing the structure of the United Way, which has grown tremendously in the past couple of years. They're actually bursting out of that office that they're in. The two houses beside of the United Way building would allow them little annex offices for extra housing. I think that Deb Eisenhower could actually speak toward that in terms of how much staff they've added on to over the years.
Okay. All right. Well, let's do the public hearing, and then we'll get into the additional questions and so forth. And that being said, I will declare the public hearing for the purpose that has been described by Mr. Jackson to be open. And if at this time there is anyone here who wishes to address the Town Council regarding this matter of rezoning, they are welcome to come forward at the present time. Yes, sir, come forward. And I would ask that you come to one of the microphones and identify yourself and give your name and address, please.
I'm Richard Clayton. I live at 478 Colonial Road. My property is adjoining the properties that are looking to be rezoned. I am against rezoning it to the B3 for the reasons that Mr. Garrett mentioned. It is a residential area. I don't particularly want to wake up next to a gas station one day. But I do have no objection to the IO rezoning. It would probably be a good match for the rest of the neighborhood. That's all.
Very good. Does anyone have any questions of this gentleman? Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming out. Yes, sir.
I'm Michael Neal. I'm representing and submitted the request for rezoning, and I'll take responsibility for not recognizing there was an opportunity for an O&I zone, and appreciate your consideration, and completely respect and appreciate the concerns expressed by the other residents in the neighborhood. So we're in full support of the OI zoning.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Eddie Copenhaver. I live at 29391 Rivermont Drive in Meadowview, Virginia. And I'm here tonight on behalf of my mother, Virginia Copenhaver, that lives at 205 Preston Street. Our concern, we don't want to be anti-business or anti-United Way or anything like that, but our concern is Heggie Street. Now, Mom's lived there. They bought the house in December of 1962, so this will be their 50th, this will be Mom's 50th year at the house. And when we started off, it was a residential neighborhood across the street. Heggie Street is their problem. And I'm going to pass around some pictures to kind of give you an idea of how wide Heggie Street is. Now, Heggie Street is an alley that's supposed to be 20 feet wide, but it's not. It's about 13 feet at its narrowest, 12 or 13 feet right at her wall. When Hiltz put their wrecker service in, we had to put up a brick wall to keep them out of our yard. And over the years, this wall has been knocked down multiple times. Every time that the wall is knocked down, it's just a drive-by. Nobody ever takes responsibility, and it costs about $500 every time it gets knocked down. Now, like I said, she's lived there for 50 years, and the problem has existed at least since 1996, because when they were trying to rezone the building at the United Way's Inn, there was a question about the alley then, it not being big enough, and they decided that if they could enter off of Preston Street, that would be fine. And we didn't object to that. Here's a memo from 96. And what we asked in 96 was that Heggie Street be made a one-way street, because it's just not wide enough to get down through here. Here's a picture of a Prius. It's a fairly small car. And there's just, you might slide another Prius by there, but you're not going to slide a full-size automobile or one of Hilt's wrecker trucks. Okay? So what we're really asking is, before you rezone this, do something to Heggie Street and have a definite plan on what you're going to do. Don't promise us that you're going to fix it later on and then not, because like I said, this is a problem that's been existing since 96. And I don't really think that the town treats my mom fair. Now, we complained that people were on our property, and we get a little bit of leftover asphalt. They get on the United Way's property, which is technically in the town right away, and the United Way gets a concrete gutter. So like I said, we're not necessarily opposed to business. I mean, I actually think that business would help the neighborhood because the neighborhood's running down. But, you know, we've got this alley that's just not wide enough for traffic. And if you look at the pictures of where they're, you know, this rezoning, the prime parking is on Heggie Street. That's the prime way to get into it. If you're going to put a parking lot, there's not a lot of parking in front, parking's in the back. And that parking's going to be accessed by Heggie Street. So what we're asking is that before you approve this, that you either come forward with a plan that says we're going to widen Heggie Street, or you make Heggie Street a one-way street. Or come up with a plan that fixes Mom's wall. Because it's not fair for her to be here, live here for 50 years, and have to pay $500 multiple times for her wall being knocked down. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Copenhaver,
Yes, sir.
there may be a question or two that other members of council might have for you while
Yes,
you're
sir.
here.
Mr. Copenhaver, I guess I just have a couple of questions. Ms. Copenhaver and I had a conversation, I guess maybe 6 months ago, and at that time, we discussed more about the water runoff issue than I guess maybe not more than the width of the road, but the water runoff issue. So I guess my first question is, was the curb and guttering put up, Mr. Dew, in order to address Ms. Copenhaver's water runoff issue?
The curb and gutter on the United Way side?
Uh-huh.
No, it was put up to help with the stormwater coming off of
That's what I mean, the stormwater.
Preston, but also to define that radius entering into Aggie.
Right, but
Aggie Drive.
that wasn't there when I went, was that there when I went down? No, the town put that up later, right? So it was to address the stormwater runoff.
Stormwater and define that edge. We were able to, in talking with the property owner there, we're able to install the curb and gutter up into the landscaped area.
Right, okay.
To open up that, to make it easier to approach the narrow pavement on Aggie.
Right, okay. So I guess I just wanted to clarify that because, you know, I don't think the town put this curb and guttering up to help the United Way property. I think they put it up to address the stormwater runoff issue. So, you know, I do appreciate your concerns, and I saw the width of the road, and I know that road is another different issue, but the curb and guttering was put up to try to help address the stormwater runoff problem.
Well, I understand that's kind of the reason for the asphalt on the other side, but I'm just saying it's not really equitable to have nice concrete gutter on one side and then a little asphalt strip on the other. I mean, I think Mom deserves as good as the other. Right. If you can put it on one side, you can put it on both sides.
If we put it on both sides, would that, if we had curb and guttering on the side where your mom's property is located, would that help with the problem?
It would I think it would definitely keep people off the wall. I mean, it's, you know, the road needs to be widened or made one way, one or the other, because the road is just not wide enough with Hiltz Wreckers coming up through there. But yeah, I mean, if you could put the curb and gutter, that would be, I think that would keep people off of her wall.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
May I ask Mr. Dew a question about the one-way? How would you feel about it being made one way or the other? Is there advantages or disadvantages to either one, Mr. Dew?
Well, just typically any street that's two-way, that's turned into one-way, there's pros and cons. You're going to please some people, you're going to displease others. There's advantages, disadvantages either way. I mean, that's an alley that it is a 20-foot right-of-way. You know, it wasn't ever intended to be 20 feet of pavement. It's a 20-foot right-of-way with a narrow pavement section there, just like, well, typically like most alleys in town. So it's they're used primarily for access. You know, they're not necessarily for two-way flowing traffic or large traffic volumes. They're for access only.
Or a piece of large machinery.
Yeah, so
I mean, that could really be detrimental for when you have large machinery coming through.
And what about the feasibility of curb and gutter on that side? Is that something realistically that could be done?
We could look at it. I mean, anything we're doing in there narrows the travel path. We don't want to get next to or right against the wall. I don't want to damage the wall any more than it already is. So, I can look at curb and gutter on that side. It certainly wasn't any slight to put the asphalt berm on there.
Mm-hmm.
We did that at the request of the property owner to try to keep the storm water off of the wall itself. And from what I understand, it's been pretty effective. So.
yeah, and I'm going to have to concur with that because the first time I went down there, it had the asphalt was the first thing they tried. And then the curb and guttering apparently has been put in since I've been there. Is that right?
Well, on the other side, where the curb and gutter...
Right, on the other side.
There was a lot of tracking.
Right.
Obviously, vehicle tracking on that side. We were able to work with the property owner, back this installation up, essentially into their landscaped area. So like I said, both serve dual purpose of both controlling the stormwater and defining that radius right there.
Right.
Giving somebody a visual and a physical delineation there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I hear your concerns, and we're still, willing to work on all that, but I just want to clarify that we actually have been trying to address Ms. Copenhaver's
Well, and we appreciate
problem.
what you've done.
Yeah, right.
But, like I said, there's if you can see in the pictures, there's a curb this big that a vehicle really just can't veer over.
Right, and that's
Okay.
another issue.
And then on Mom's side, there's a little hump about this big that you just kind of go right over it.
Right, I understand that.
So-
I'm just saying that's another
Well,
problem.
I do appreciate your concern.
It wasn't intended to be a slight, it was intended to be a practical solution.
Yeah, we were just, yeah,
Yeah.
And two different purposes. I mean, the berm is there strictly for stormwater.
right.
Curb's there for other.
So the issue, and I guess this is my question, we can't go back and undo a business that was put back there, however many years ago it was put back there, but there is a legitimate question about the size and volume of traffic that goes down that road to that business. So, I guess my question would be, can we, or Public Works, do some kind of study to give us a recommendation on the road itself because of the business traffic?
So I think you're definitely going to have to study the directional traffic flow from that business, because either direction he goes out of there with the big trucks is a problem maneuvering corners. So we want to make sure, I think, whatever plan of action we come up with, we're not transferring the problem from one end of the street to the other end of the street.
Right, understood.
And I have been out there with Eddie and his mother and seen the damage to the wall, so I know that it does get hit. Probably, I can only speculate as to how it's getting hit, but, there may be ways that Public Works we can try to develop a plan, report to the council, and see if it's acceptable. Whether or not it's one way or not, I don't know. But I do know with the bend in the curve that John has created there gives a greater turning radius, I guess, than what was there, because it actually went over into the United Way's property where they had, I believe, a flower bed.
Right, they did.
And went over there to try to give a little more of a turning radius. Now, I don't know if you've had any problems since that was put in, but, it's something that we can definitely look at studying.
Right.
No, but, and I feel bad because I'm talking bad about the United Way, but a lot of that landscaping is actually in the right-of-way. So, if they can come out 2 or 3 feet in the right-of-way, why can't we? We're right on our line. Our wall is actually inside of our line. So, I'm not coming to be argumentative. I'm questioning why that we have to give up everything and they get extra.
Okay, if I can ask one more question.
Yes, sir.
And it's not to Eddie, it's to the developer that was talking a minute ago. On your plans, on your developmental plans, where do you plan to do the entrance and egress in on those properties?
It's on
Through Heggie Street, or on through Preston Street, and just take it on up through Preston Street?
I'll let the United Way speak for their lot, but for the 2 houses, the only access would be through Hagee Street.
Yeah.
We even went out and looked, the houses are so close together that to put a driveway down through the middle of them to access them from Colonial Road is not reasonable.
I think the point we're all trying to get around to here, Mr. Copenhaver, is we are looking at it, and a one-way street might not be the best thing, but there might be some kind of obstacle that we can put on your side of the property that would hopefully help prevent that. Maybe even I don't know, but maybe even some kind of fence in front of a wall, I'm just saying, but, yeah.
Anything to keep it off of.
Yeah, looking at a traffic study,
Yeah.
right.
That's a lot for somebody living on a fixed income.
Yes, it
Yes,
is.
sir, it is.
It is, and
Okay.
right, thank you.
All right. right. Any other questions of Mr. Copenhaver while he's here? Thank you. I appreciate you bringing those matters to our attention. Yes, sir.
I'm Travis Staten, CEO for United Way of Virginia Highlands, previously Russell and Washington counties when this request was submitted. I think regardless of our issues with Hagee Street, our building zone manufacturing, our parking lot zone residential, the request is really to come for you to be more adequately zoned to represent the type of business that we are. And I know that we will gladly work with our friends and neighbors as well as with the town on any ideas or ways we can enhance that property or work to better Hagee Street. But really the request was allow United Way to be zoned appropriately as well as allow United Way to look futuristically as maybe as well considering expanding our operations here in Abingdon. So thank you for that consideration.
Okay, Mr. Berry?
Mr. Mayor, Travis, I was going to ask that question about future development. What do you see for your property down the road for egress?
Currently, right now, that building is a little bit under 2,000 square feet. It is not really an adequate size building for us. We, with our merger, are now looking at additional office space on Colonial Drive there that might be available. But we are looking with the adjoining lot now that we did take possession of, that our parking lot is on, is maybe futuristically making an L-shaped building and putting the main entrance of that building at ground level with the parking lot and actually cleaning all of that up there, but we're kind of waiting to do anything until we see what happens rezoning-wise and everything else.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council on this matter? Don't be shy. Okay. There being no one else who wishes to address the council on this matter, I will declare the public hearing to be closed. Council, do you have any questions of our staff or anybody present here about this matter?
Just, do we have to, I mean, you don't need a motion to to do a traffic study and to see what you can do about Hagee Street.
We can look into it, and we can also, as Mr. Staten had just mentioned, as he works forward with his development, we can perhaps incorporate some of the upgrades into that development aspect of it.
I was just going to ask if maybe we could have this as a topic for a future work session.
How would you say that?
A report from the Public Works on any upgrades or enhancements to the properties or any impact to Hagee Street after a study's done. That's what I would ask.
I guess I want to make sure that we're talking the right thing, because I view this as something that we can, our staff is adequate to deal with internally. We don't need to hire out for any type of independent study for this.
No, you're doing traffic counts and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we can handle that, and I think the point of reporting back to the council would be once we have a firm idea of what United Way is actually going to do, because we don't want it to go in and fix it once and then have to turn around and fix it again.
I'll be honest with you, I'd feel a whole lot more comfortable about this whole business if we could have our staff work with this gentleman and try and shape up those plans. And would it be possible to bring it back in November?
I'll sort of say if Mr. Berry would let it be old business, I'd rather see it in, as.
Well, that's fine too. I was just asking that the staff provide a recommendation on how we can make this a right solution for everybody, from the United Way to the developer to the residents. I think we need to look at the whole picture.
Well, and I think, Mr. Copenhaver and his mom have raised some, very realistic issues. You and I had a talk about it one day. You work at the registrar's office, if I recall, yes, and we've talked about it a little bit, and, I think you've raised some real concerns, and naturally we're, Ms. Eisenhower and company have been major supporters of the United Way, and we definitely recognize the benefit and importance that the United Way brings to this community as well. So we want to try and find some solution that will help everybody to be good neighbors. And there may very well be some things that our town can do to facilitate this process of helping the United Way to get what it needs in terms of being able to expand and serve the community and protecting the interests that you've described here. I would entertain a motion, perhaps, if we, Mr. Kelly, you look like you have something on the tip of your tongue.
Mr. Mayor, before we, if you're asking for a motion to postpone this until the next meeting, I need to make sure that, and I'm going to look at legal counsel here, Mr. Jackson, that I believe action is required within 30 days, and our next meeting is beyond 30 days from today. Otherwise, it's deemed to be accepted.
Okay, so I'm hearing what might be an approach. This has to be voted on twice, or is the general rule, before it could become effective. So it might be possible, if folks were inclined, to perhaps enable it to move forward on the first vote, but it wouldn't be approved until the second vote. And are we under, what is our obligation beyond approval on the first vote?
You can, because it is a zoning issue, you have the second reading at the November meeting, and then it would take place within 30 days after that second meeting. So you're looking at December 1st, I guess, before the actual rezoning would take effect.
Do you think you could have a recommendation for us on how to handle this on November the 1st?
I think John and I
For our November
talk,
meeting?
and the engineering staff can talk as well as planning. We can try to figure it out. I need to ask Mr. Staten what his timetable is.
Currently, right now, with 2,000 square feet, I do not have adequate space. The building expansion was down the road, but as a temp situation, was looking at renting one of these facilities on Colonial Drive, which would allow us to stay here in Abingdon until we were to add on to our building, and that's part of rezoning request as well. Those are all zoned residential right now, including our lot, so that would prohibit us from doing that, and I'm actually desperately in need of space now.
But let me call something to Ms. Copenhagen's attention that you know, but I'm not sure everybody else heard you, is that the building itself is actually zoned to be manufacturing, which is not a very good use for that building. So the reason, and tell me the split zoning there. The building itself is currently zoned.
The building itself is currently M1 limited industrial.
Right. Okay, and then
Parking area is residential.
okay. So Ms. Copenhagen, what everybody is asking is kind of getting around to is that office and institutional would be a much better zoning to protect your neighborhood in the future, and that we, the town council, have asked the staff to look at the road issue and give us a recommendation before the second reading of office and institutional rezoning. So, in essence, this will address that problem. Okay? Okay.
And if I could, maybe another factor too would, Travis, how many workers do you see going in one of those buildings?
One of the houses over there, 4 to 5 at most, so it'd
Just
be
in
4
one of
or
those?
5 cars.
So it really would be no different than if there were 2 cars?
They're going to be at our building now, or
Will they be parking at your building, or?
they would either be parking our building or look at putting parking behind one of those houses.
And so, Mr. Neal, if it was residential, would you still see putting a parking area back there for?
Yes.
Okay, so it very well could act as a residential parking situation anyway. It doesn't, it doesn't increase.
Off the original apartment that they have now, 89 Way, and go straight out there. And then be able to access it off Crescent Street rather than Hague Street to begin with.
It's too close.
I don't know that you could come off of the current parking lot into the And, yeah.
We could come off of our current parking lot, would we be crossing over another lot to get to the
Right,
property that
right,
we're...
right.
Yeah.
Houses
Yeah.
belong to the same person.
No. But my point was that it really wouldn't increase the traffic any differently than if it was residential, but...
Well, office and institutional is going to be more protective zoning.
Right.
My point is, office and institutional is going to be more protective zoning than industrial.
Yeah, you've got a real can of worms right there over the, the long haul with the current zoning that you have there.
Mr. Mayor, I'm ready to move that we rezone the property that we've been talking about, and I won't read all the places, to office and institutional.
And I'll bet you're moving that we do that on the first reading.
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to enact the requested zoning on the first ordinance, or excuse me, let's try that again. On the first reading, we would enact that rezoning on the first reading, and not included in your motion, but a clear expectation of the staff or of our council is that there would be a report from our staff at the November meeting prior to any further action that we take about how we might resolve some of the issues and concerns that have been brought to our attention this evening. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming tonight. This has been very helpful and has been useful for us to help understand the issues that you're experiencing in that neighborhood, and we will try our best to work out an adequate solution to the problems that we have, and hopefully continue to see good service from the United Way as well. We really do appreciate you being here tonight.
Can I just, Mr. Mayor, say one more thing?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Copenhaver, knowing that it's difficult for you to get out, as soon as the council has made a recommendation and has come up with a plan for Heggie Street, Mr. Dew will get in touch with you and let you know what that is. Okay? Okay. And or the town manager.
I'll bet the town manager will take the initiative on this as part of his prerogative there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, our next, we have an additional public hearing on the first reading. An ordinance by the council of the town of Abingdon, Virginia to repeal, amend, and reenact Part 2, Code, Chapter 66, Taxation, Article 2, Real Property Tax, Division 5, Historic Tax Abatement, Section 6671 through 6678, to amend Sections 6671 and 6675, and add Sections 6676 through 6678 to the Code of Ordinances of the town of Abingdon, Virginia, and she sells seashells by the seashore. And again, this will be designed to provide incentive to homeowners in the historic district to complete essential maintenance, restoration, preservation, and rehabilitation projects through extending a 10-year comprehensive tax credit for eligible rehabilitation projects completed in an exemption from tax assessment increases for a period of 10 years. And Mr. Jackson, if you tell us what that means.
Well, I'm not sure about the seashell part, but I'll talk about the taxes.
There you go.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, the Board of Architectural Review has been working for over a year on different projects within their scope, one being the preservation plan and two being the design and review guidelines, which govern the historic district. The historic district's one of the town's top economic impact areas for tourism. It's one of the draws that we have. And one thing that the Board of Architectural Review deals with on a monthly basis is reviewing projects as they come before us for residential and businesses. These projects vary from windows and shutters to painting houses, painting roofs, new decks, so on and so forth. The previous and the current ordinance isn't very, I guess, friendly in the sense that a property owner would have to do enough work to amount to 25% of their assessed value of their structure, which in general, most properties we have need a lot of work, but that work doesn't always end up being 25%. Now, some people may own property in the historic district that actually does equal up to that. But when you start talking about the style of roof that has to be put on, it has to be historically accurate and whatnot, those get extremely pricey. And so in looking across the Commonwealth and then throughout the country with different tax programs, we sort of morphed into our own, and the board created one that's extremely aggressive. Mayor of Charleston, South Carolina looked at it and was extremely impressed if it could be approved. This one would repeal and amend what we have and would be a $25,000 tax credit per every 6 months for the amount of work that's done. So if you do $10,000 worth of work, a roof, for instance, a new metal roof, standing seam for some of the houses would equal up to about $10,000 to $12,000. Divide that into $2,500, and you'd get that many 6 months or that many tax payment credits over a 10-year period. And I think $10,000 actually ending up to being about your 10-year cycle. I think that's what we came up with. So if you did $5,000 worth of work, a property owner would get a year's worth of tax credits taken. So this would be a revolving and rolling tax credit program. It wouldn't be an abatement program in the sense that taxes are just done away with. How this would work was you would get a credit, and then once that credit is up, the new assessment on your structure, not just the property but the structure, would go into effect, and that would be with the new improvements. So you may not have to pay taxes for 2 years or so for a new roof, but then that reassessment would go into effect that next time around, and your assessment value would be higher. The one property that would really throw a wrench in all this would be the Martha, and that would be if, God forbid, we have another tornado and the roof were removed, or something significant to that effect. That would be the only property that, in our discussions, we've identified that would be a significant impact as far as the town's taxes would be in discussions. But a typical house with painting, shutters, windows, and windows seem to be a big issue because we need heating and cooling efficiency and whatnot, and it's not easy to do in a historic structure. But there are ways of doing it, but it's expensive. And so this gives a sort of a credit to and a carrot to the property owners to maintain their structures and businesses as well.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Jackson about this?
And I probably just missed it. What did you say about additions? Like you had a historic structure, then the addition, would that be part of that?
No, it would just be for the structure as is, yes.
Okay, so just help me here just a minute. The ordinance allows a 6-month tax abatement.
That abatement
Since
word,
taxes are paid twice per year for every qualifying $2,500. So if they have invested $2,500, they would not pay taxes on that $2,500.
no, let's say this was approved today, and Mr. Humphreys puts a new roof on his house in the historic district, and it qualified as a qualifying project. For next year's taxes, and let's say it costs $5,000, and for next year's taxes, he owes $5,000 on taxes. Probably not, but hypothetically. The $2,500 apiece that he used toward putting that roof on would, in effect, keep him from having to pay taxes for a year, and then after that, he would have to start paying again. It'd be a tax credit, not so much an abatement.
But you would have up to 10 years to work through that credit?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So in other words, let's say that, the Morgan home, which is not in the historic district, had the $5,000 roof paid on it, and I was having to pay $1,000 for that roof. With the sufficient advance credits and approvals, I would get a credit on my property taxes for a period of, say, up to 10 years or until I work through that amount. Is that correct?
That's correct. Mhm.
All right, so I might...
It rolls with the years.
Okay, so in other words, you would get registered with that amount, and I might have up to 10 years and so forth until I work down that amount. And then when we're done with that amount, the reassessed value of the property goes into effect.
Correct.
Okay.
So, Mr. Kelly, is this your recommendation?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Based on the recommendation made by the BAR.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the Board of Architectural Review unanimously voted on this to recommend it to the council. And the reason it's a credit versus an abatement is we feel as a board that we need to give a real carrot, as Garrett said, to the property owners to maintain the historic district. And this does that, and it's probably the most aggressive, if we pass it, in the state of Virginia.
It would be.
So it'd be my recommendation that I move that we adopt the amendment as presented to modify the code as the Board of Architectural Review recommended.
I would add that there are a few properties in the district that could really significantly use this credit.
Okay, and is there a second to that?
I'm going to abstain being in the historic district.
Well, that's, okay, yeah, that's going to limit how many people we...
Yeah, you got two.
Okay.
And I guess the reason, and Mr. Barry, if you'll just hold your motion, well, I'll second it so we can
Okay.
continue to discuss it.
All right, that's what we need
Yeah.
to do there. Well, while you're getting your thoughts, I'll throw out one. And I have an answer. It's somewhat of a rhetorical question, and I'm prepared to answer it. But the question being, how come we offered this to the historic district and not to everybody else in town?
Well, I knew that question would come up, and
There you go.
and
There's
that's-
the man.
The historic district, as I said, is an economic driver for the town and tourism driver for the town. The requirements for folks in the historic district, both businesses and residents, are much more strict than anybody else in town. Even the entrance corridor.
Under the BAR as far as what we can do.
Right. I mean, even Mr. Howard wanting to build a dog fence, that would have to be approved. So there are restrictions that the majority of folks in town do not have to go under that folks in the historic district do. And it does become a pricey game to play.
Yeah, on those guidelines, I would like for you to start on my roof for $5,000 for the figure you threw out.
That was a bad example.
Well, I guess the only reason, I just want to understand, I'm not questioning I'm not questioning BAR because I think we have probably one of the best BARs I've seen in a long time. I just want to understand the tax credit because people pay 28 cents on the 100 for the value of their house.
Right.
But you're saying that if their house is valued at $300,000, they won't pay that
No, not that.
$700.
No, it's whatever the tax bill, say the bill is $1,000 a year. And so they'd have to pay that twice. So you'd have a $500 payment in the spring, $500 in the fall. So if you have that $2,500 to play with, that would roll over to what, 2.5 years? So you wouldn't pay taxes for 2.5 years on that $2,500. Okay.
Okay. Now, there is a little procedural glitch here that I can only blame myself for, which is this is supposed to be a public hearing, and I forgot it, and it's been reminded to me of that, and we also offered our motions out of order, and, and it really isn't appropriate for us to have motions before we have the public hearings. We're not supposed to make up our minds ahead of time.
Mr. Mayor, I will withdraw my motion.
And I'll bet you withdraw your...
I'd love to.
God bless you. Okay, that being said, if you'll just have a seat there for a moment, Mr. Jackson. This is a public hearing on the topic that we have been discussing at great length so far, and perhaps we've even helped to enlighten some parties on, what we're about here. That being said, I will call the public hearing to order, and if there is anyone here tonight who wishes to address the council on this matter, please come forward at the present time. There does not appear to be anyone who wishes to address the council on this matter at the present time. I will therefore declare the public hearing to be closed. And council, what is your pleasure regarding this matter?
I think we're going to have a discussion first, so I'll wait.
At this point, we'll entertain a motion.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt and amend this as presented and based on the recommendation of the BAR.
And the one of us who can
Second.
second it is seconded. Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance on the first reading, as we've discussed it so far. And council, what is, again, we're here tonight to discuss this. Your thoughts on the matter, please.
Just to add one comment, Mr. Jackson, he could elaborate if he wants to, but the BAR talked about most of the projects we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years, and we think this